Hello. This documentary is going to go over the history and experience of the Aspec community. This documentary is not going to go super in depth, so if you want to learn more, please visit the link in the description of the video or go to sites.google.com/view/aspec-project. Firstly, I just want to go over some quick terminology so you know what I'm talking about. Firstly, asexual means someone who experiences little to no sexual attraction, while aromantic means someone who experiences little to no romantic attraction. I myself am both and use the term aroace, which means you are both aromantic and asexual. I will be using the common shortening of these, ace and aro respectively, for the remainder of this documentary. Another term, aspec, I use a lot, is someone who is on the aromantic, asexual, or both spectrums. The final term is allo, which is used to refer to anyone who experiences romantic, sexual, or both attraction. This is regardless of sexuality, whether it be straight, gay, bi, pan, or anything else. Now with terminology out of the way, let's get into the history of the ace community. The very first mention of the word asexual was in 1907, when Reverend Cardinal Siegel was advocating for the same laws for homosexuals, heterosexuals, bisexuals, and asexuals. One of the more famous things in ace history was in 1948, when the Kinsey sale included the X category for men, which essentially stood for asexual. In 1972, Lisa Orlando published the Asexual Manifesto, which described an asexual person as someone relating sexually to no one. Some of the article outlines particularly harmful myths associated with the importance of sex in relationships, which are very common with the concepts of amatonormativity and compulsory sexuality. In 1973, some activists at the Barnard College were pictured to include asexual on a board advocating to choose your own label. The picture was supposed to appear in an article which described asexuality as an orientation that regards a partner as non-essential to sex and sex as non-essential to a satisfying relationship. Then, in 1974, singer David Bowie talked about asexuality in an article that appeared in Rolling Stone. Then, in 1977, Mira Johnson wrote one of the first academic papers about asexuality as part of the book As Sexually Oppressed. She described asexuality as a complete lack of sexual desire, which is not a good definition of being ace, as it's not entirely true. Then, in 1980, the DSM-3 was the first version of the DSM to include a disorder relating to low sexual desire. Yes, asexuality was labeled as a disorder until 2013 when I was 3 years old. In 1994, Anthony Beauregard conducted a study that was published in the Journal of Sex Research that concluded that 1 in 100 people identified as asexual. This study is still cited to this day, as many ace people still say that we are the 1% of the population, which equals to 80 million aces, and there is most likely a lot more. In 1997, Zoe O'Reilly published the article My Life as an Amoeba in a webzine, which was a first-person exploration of asexuality that sparked responses through the 90s and early 2000s by people who identified with it, and is one of the most popular pieces of media in the ace community. In 2001, David J. founded the Asexual Visibility and Education Network, or AVEN. It's one of the most prolific and well-known of the various asexual communities that started to form since the creation of internet and social media. Then in 2002, New York passed the Sexual Orientation Non-Discrimination Act, which was the first and currently only piece of legislation mentioning asexuality in the world. Then in 2005, Stephen Hellenberg revealed that SpongeBob SquarePants is asexual. We may not get a lot of representation, but at least we have SpongeBob. Then, in 2010, the asexual pride flag we have today was created. And another thing that happened in 2010 was that Asexual Awareness Week, now called Ace Week, was founded by Sarah Beth Brooks. In 2019, Washington became the first U.S. state to recognize Asexual Awareness Week, which it did through a ceremonial proclamation signed by Governor Jay Inslee. Then in 2022, YouTuber Jaden Animations came out as aromantic and asexual in her video Being Not Straight. Her animation reached over 20 million views and is currently the most viewed video on YouTube about asexuality and aromanticism. This video is amazing and I highly recommend that you watch it. Then in 2023, the world's first in-person asexual pride parade was held in Budapest, Hungary on April 15th. About 160 people participated in the march. Again, in 2023, Yasmin Benoy became the first openly asexual Grand Marshal for NYC Pride, and in 2024, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro issued a message recognizing April 6th as Asexuality Day. That's the history of the ace community. Now let's go over the history of the aro community. Then, in 2005, one of the earliest uses of the term aromantic can be found. What's interesting about this specific find is that it's used on a thread for an AVEN orientation poll, back when aromantics were likely known as asexual. Of the 1,793 people who checked off their orientation, 302 checked off this asexual label as their answer. In 2006, a few years after the term was very first posted, we began to see a few more uses of the term aromantic. One comment has the author saying, "I consider myself to be an aromantic asexual or an asexual asexual." There was very little mention of aromanticism until 2010, when aromanticism began to gain a community in Avon. In 2014, the aromantic pride flag was created by Cameron Whimsy. In 2014, the first Aromantic Spectrum Awareness Week was recognized from November 10th to 17th, and was subsequently moved to February in 2015 to be held the week after Valentine's Day. In 2018, the term aromantic was added to the Oxford English Dictionary. That means that we weren't in the dictionary until I was 8 and in 3rd grade. Then in 2023, the first annual Aromantic Visibility Day was held on June 5th. And that's about all of it. The term aromantic and aromantics as a community is very new, almost being just a tiny bit older than me, which is really surprising. But now, let's move on to some Aspec people's experiences. Firstly, I want to go over my experience being Aspec. Since I'm a teen and not an adult, my experience is quite different from most Aspec people. I don't have to go through a lot of things that adult Aspec people do have to go through. But my experience is that it's kind of hard to engage with essentially all young adult media, since 99% of all young adult media is focused around romance, and it's just something that I literally don't feel and don't connect with, so it's really hard for me to enjoy that. And something that actually happened to me was in 6th grade, one of my friends asked me who I had a crush on. I was unaware that the term aromantic or asexual even existed, so I just assumed I was straight, and I said no one, as that was true. However, he kept saying I had to have a crush on someone, which is very heteronormative, which is the assumption that everyone wants a romantic relationship and feels romantic attraction. I eventually caved and said I had a crush on one of my friends who was a girl, and I then spent the entire rest of the year convincing myself I had a crush on her. Of course, I eventually learned that I didn't a few months ago when I was sort of just looking back on the situation. And this is a common thing that happens with Aspec people, is that people assume that they have to have a crush on someone, so they eventually fake crushes to fit in. One final thing is that I think I'm personally a lot more proud of being Aspec than most people, as I'm not currently an adult and I don't have to deal with a lot of things. But one of the things that I do like is that I think my friendships mean a lot more to me than most allo people, because romantic relationships aren't currently in the picture for me, so my friendships are kind of all that I have, which means that my friendships just mean so much to me, and I really think that's a good thing. So that's my experience. Let's talk about some other people's. I gathered these experiences from Aspec people on Reddit and Avon in Ace Forum and Aeropocalypse in Aeroforum. Firstly, Reddit user Fefnefer described being Aspec as having to explain asexuality over and over again, knowing it's a simple concept to grasp, but a large portion of allo folk pretend it's rocket science and don't get it. Also being shunned from straight spaces for being too queer, and being shunned from queer spaces for being too straight. Along with being told you're so pretty, it's such a waste, or you just need the right person, or I can change you over and over again. And also having your sexuality questioned by medical professionals and suggested that it's trauma or can be medicated away. Another user, Alive Kinda, describes being ace like this. Imagine not liking tea and living in Britain. Tea is a big part of the culture. You see it everywhere. It's a key part of everyone's life. It's a thing people share in common. It's an expectation. If someone visits your house, they expect a cup of tea. Being ace is similar to not liking tea. They're a lot less well known as well, and we don't face typical discrimination because people know or refuse to even consider that we exist in the first place. It's like being a foreigner in a country you grew up in. They said they don't really feel safe in queer spaces because being ace isn't often seen as being part of LGBT. User Amphibious Cow said, I'm going to start off with a bit heavy with my personal experience growing up as an asexual. I was insanely confused in my preteen years. I felt like there was something wrong with me. That's one of the main reasons I was depressed. It wasn't until Jaden Animations made her video about being ace that I even learned what that meant. The term really started clicking with me then, and it wasn't until Todd in BoJack Horseman came out as Ace that I really started to understand that's me. User Vincifica049 said their experience was thinking you're broken or something's wrong with you, but eventually coming across the term asexuality and realizing that you're not broken at all. Oh, the world just places a lot of value on allonormativity. Another honorable mention is hearing you just haven't met the right person yet when choosing to speak about asexuality. I've heard it too many times to count. User Glittering Knee 9595 outlines something that many people experience, like you exist on a different plane from someone else. Everyone else can often experience health professionals trying to fix you and a general lack of understanding in the world, including LGBTQIA+ world. Another user, Why Do We Exist Anyway, said it's so alienating in so many ways. People, even who look upon LGBTQIA+ individuals in a favorable way generally, never understand what it's like to be aroace, even if you've explained it to them dozens of times. Several of my friends keep suggesting that I'll eventually find someone or constantly make jokes about romantic prospects, even though I've made them aware that it makes me uncomfortable. Almost never being a priority for friends, particularly, and even family sometimes because their romantic partners always come first. Loneliness, although most days I'm quite happy with my identity. Sometimes I feel a sense of loss when I see people progressing in life with their partners and such. Never being able to understand the type of hype surrounding sex, as I'm sex repulsed. When I state that I never really been interested in sexual stuff or find it repulsive, people find it extremely absurd. So absurd that no amount of explaining or educating really helps them understand. However, they did mention some positives of being aspec. They said, I'm not really stressed about seeking someone out or feel the need to have a significant other, which makes life a bit easier, I think. I've seen a lot of alloromantic people being hyper-obsessed with a significant other whenever they have one or not. I've enjoyed being my own person. Not that you can't do that in a relationship. It's just most people I know limit themselves to partners in a lot of ways. In a weird way, it's sort of nice to not have to worry that much about another person's emotions, actions, and feelings all the time. User Pylean Cow 06 highlighted something that I think is very important. I skimmed some of the comments and didn't see anything about how media is so romance/sex driven. Like, almost every single movie turns into a love story, even kids' movies. I absolutely love the movie Brave because she's so against getting married. You don't see that much in the media. User LazyWishbone2341 simply said, Valentine's Day is hell, which is something that I kind of agree with because it's an entire holiday just focused around romance. Finally, user World Class Shrexpert said, it annoys me seeing how people just jump to romance so quickly and to see so people put so much emphasis on it. Like, I don't get why people think about it as much as they do. It's very alienating. These people are just a few of the millions of different Aspec people and millions of different experiences that Aspec people have. Now that we've gone over the history and experiences of the Aspec community, what can we learn? We know that aromanticism and asexuality are relatively new terms that are very underrepresented. Aro history goes back to around 2002, which is only 23 years ago, and ace history really started in the 70s and 80s, which is around 35 to 45 years ago, not even 50 years old. The Aspec as a community is relatively new and thus experiences lots of people claiming they aren't real or need fixing. There isn't much information about Aspec people, which can lead people to just assume that we don't exist. This is shown by people's experiences, as most of them were actually negative. We experience discrimination in the form of people saying we just need to find the right person or there's something wrong with us. This, of course, is not true. There's nothing wrong with us. We don't need fixing. We are perfectly fine the way we are. I hope this gave you a little insight into the Aspec community, and if you want to learn more, please visit the link in the description or go to sites.google.com/view/aspec-project. And thank you for watching, and I hope you learned something.